Sometimes you have to admire how dedicated some people are to believing what they want to believe. Like, I can get wanting to hold on to beliefs that don't have a great chance of being actually true, but are still possibly true. Like, yeah, I guess I can't definitively prove that there isn't a giant alien living inside the moon. And yeah, I guess I can't definitively prove that Seinfeld is the best sitcom of all time. Except yes, that one actually is completely true, and if you don't think so, you're stupid. But what I find slightly admirable, and also slightly disturbing, is how confidently some people hold on to things that have been absolutely objectively proven wrong. And then they're so dedicated to those beliefs that when they attempt to prove them, they end up just proving the opposite. And then they have to just sit there in their puddle of wrongness for everyone to see. But they can't back down because then they'd have to admit that they're actually wrong, and they're incapable of doing that. And on that note, Starfield. Starfield has generated more salt than any other game I've ever seen, and I think that's for a number of reasons. As you've surely noticed by now, a lot of the angriest Starfield anger comes from the PlayStation side of the internet, who absolutely cannot fathom that Xbox has a decent exclusive on their hands, but other Xbox exclusives don't get hit nearly as hard by the PS5 faithful as Starfield has, and I think that's because Starfield is frankly the exact opposite of the games that Sony tells their consumers are good. First-party PlayStation games are, generally speaking, very cinematic, very pretty, very hand-holdy, very polished, and very, very safe. They take very few risks with their gameplay and instead mash together a bunch of ideas that are generally seen as good, and they do their best to make sure no one is ever left behind during the experience. And I'm really not trying to say that like it's an objectively bad thing. I know games like this obviously have a market, but the point I'm getting at is that Sony's definition of a good game is basically the exact opposite of the game Starfield is. It's not cinematic, it's very rough around the edges, and it doesn't give a shit about holding your hand. And while I absolutely see the issues that a decent chunk of players have had with this game, I can also absolutely see why so many people have fallen in love with it. So when the die-hard PlayStation guys see Starfield taking off, no pun intended, it angers them more than usual because they can't wrap their angry little heads around the fact that this game that's nothing like what they've been told is good is really connecting with people. It's the same reason why so many PlayStation diehards absolutely lost their minds when Elden Ring surpassed The Last of Us 2 as the most awarded game of all time or whatever. I made a whole video about that when it happened, and it's only gotten more relevant with time because the whole Starfield fiasco is basically the Elden Ring fiasco on steroids. And I'm spending so much extra time explaining this in the beginning of this video because it's the only way that I can make sense of the nonsense that I'm about to show you. So the other day, this tweet started making the rounds, and as I've said several times recently, I'm honestly amazed we're still doing this. Like, it's just getting kind of creepy at this point how fucking much these people hate Starfield. The game is out, it's already succeeded, there's nothing you can do about it, and yet you're still going out of your way to try and demean it and divert people away from it, when really all you're doing at this point is making sure the internet never forgets this game exists. But anyways, the other day, Twitter user @iHugie decided to take a gander at the Steam charts, and he saw that Starfield was down at number 9 in terms of concurrent players. He then let the gears in his brain chug for a few hours before coming up with the absolute baller-ass caption, "Starfield never stood a chance." Good work, Hugo, you've done amazing work here. Except no, this is actually perhaps the dumbest Starfield take I've seen in a while. And with how many fucking Starfield salt videos I've made, that's saying something. See, Starfield is a single-player game. There is no multiplayer component. It's not the kind of game that generally inhabits the top of Steam charts, because its continued existence does not rely on people inhabiting the servers together. Starfield is the same right now as it would be if there were only 5 people playing it, which can't be said for most of the other games at the top of Steam charts that exist on shared communities keeping the servers populated. The fact that a purely single-player game is still cranking numbers like this is actually ridiculously impressive and is a testament as to just how many people are connecting with this game. And just to make it even more impressive, Steam is completely unrelated to Game Pass. Game Pass players are not included on the Steam charts, so the fact that Starfield is performing this well on the Steam charts, I can only imagine how well it's doing overall. At the time of this video's recording, Steam charts has Starfield at number 7, and more importantly, the top sellers chart on Steam itself has Starfield at number 5, which is frankly insane that a $70 game is still that high this long after release. I don't even know the last time I saw a single player game other than Baldur's Gate 3 be this dominant for this long on Steam. This kind of thing usually doesn't happen. Like, I can't stress enough, like as a longtime PC gamer, I can't stress enough that this kind of thing, a single player game being this high on the sales charts and this high on Steam charts for this long, like, this kind of thing rarely happens. But it's also worth pointing out that Steam is the biggest digital distribution service in the world for video games. Even if Starfield was down at number 20 on both charts, on both the Steam charts and Steam top sellers, if it was down at number 20, that would be an insane achievement. But what is it you said about this exactly? Starfield never stood a chance? Because why? Exactly. Because it's a single player game that isn't literally the most played game on Steam at all times? Like, truly, what would this game have to do in order for you people to think it was a success? And before you get to thinking I'm over here ranting for 58 hours about one singular tweet, Hugo did his best to defend himself when he rightfully started getting roasted in the replies, because like I said before, if he backed off of his opinion, he would have to admit that he's wrong, and the people blindly shitting on this game are not the kind of people capable of admitting any kind of fault. And at this point, it's just kind of fucking pathetic. Terpene Hunter replies, crazy that PlayStation guys hype this game so much and don't play it at all. Y'all just use it for stats like this. Imagine how long people are going to talk about a 12-hour copy and paste Spider-Man. Hugo replies, cry louder. Excellent argument. You're doing a great job defending your perspective. Slim Pickens says, cry louder. You've just started crying again after more ABK news, it seems. Hugo lashing out like a petulant child. Hugo says, still crying, lad? You'll be fine. And a few people pointed out an obvious irony here is that PlayStation guys love using Steam charts and Steam numbers to demean Xbox, but literally, when's the last time a PlayStation game on Steam even got close to these kinds of numbers? Like, if you guys want to use Steam to justify console positions, we can do that. It's just, it's not gonna go well for you. And I mean, Hugo's also out here retweeting stuff like this, calling Starfield a flop. He's retweeting the Red Dragon, because of course he is. He's retweeting the Red Dragon again. He's retweeting Unleashed. He's out here saying Fallout 76 is better than Starfield. And typically with my Starfield Salt videos, I take a more rapid-fire, hardy-har tone. But it's honestly kind of hard to be hardy-har about this shit at this point, because it's just bordering on creepy how much you guys hate a fucking video game. Especially when we all know that you would be eating it up if it had a PlayStation logo instead of a Microsoft one. Starfield was a huge success for Bethesda, it was a huge success for Microsoft, and the Steam charts are only reaffirming that with every day that this game remains in the Steam top 20, that it remains in the top 20 of the concurrent players, every single day that it remains in those charts is just more and more evidence that this game was a success and continues to be a success. The fact that you guys are digging so deep and trying to find so many different angles to demean a game that you're never going to play, but you would have played if it had the right logo on it, is just fucking weird. It's just weird. And honestly, I can't wait for Microsoft or Bethesda to come out with the official sales numbers, because I'm really interested. I want to know how many copies of this game have been sold. We know how many people have played the game. You know, they said they broke 10 million players, like, what was it, like 2 weeks after launch, a week and a half after launch? I want to know how many copies have been sold. Because like I said, the Steam version is completely separate from Game Pass. The people playing the Steam version paid $70 for it, and it's dominating the sales charts. Like, I want to know how many copies of this game have been sold. And that's not even getting into all the physical copies of the game that have been sold, all the Xbox digital copies of the game that have been sold. Like, I want to know the sales numbers for this game, and I'm sure we're going to get them soon. But it doesn't even matter how high the sales numbers are, because it's never going to be enough for you people. You're just going to complain and then move on and then find some weird, like, turnaround mental gymnastics reason why the numbers are bad. All the while fully aware of the fact that, again, if the game was on PlayStation, you wouldn't have a word to say about it. Like, what would have happened in that alternate timeline where Sony got their way and actually made Starfield an exclusive? But I find it hard to believe that you guys would be this enthusiastically negative about it if it was on your platform, or even if it was multi-platform. Like, fuck. Ugh. Anyways, Starfield Salt, the gift that keeps on giving for me. Toodles.